Mr. Spencer Lodge, welcome to Life's Important Questions. Great to have you on the show, brother.
Thanks very much for having me, mate. It's as you said earlier, it's been a long time coming, but it's here. We're here now.
Really.
Let's do something with this.
So I flipped the title around a little bit. Obviously, the show is called Life's Important Questions. And so for me, the title of the show couldn't be more appropriate, which is how do you become great at sales when you hate selling? Obviously, there's so many misconceptions about what selling even is, what people feel about it. There's a lot of, I think, negative energy if you've not been in sales, if you've not done it or enjoyed it. First question, why is being great at sales, especially in today's economy, why is being great at it so important?
Well, look, I think that a lot of people think that selling's a dirty word, but name a business that doesn't need to sell something. There isn't one. Every business out there is selling something. You know, you go, oh, Facebook doesn't sell anything. Yes, it does. Sells advertising space. Lawyers, they don't sell everything. Yes, they do. They sell legal services. Well, surgeons don't. Yes, they do. They sell, like my back surgeon sold me a back operation that cost my insurance company 100,000 quid. So everyone's selling something. And the businesses that succeed the best are the people that really recognize that and respect that and understand that they have to go and find revenue for their business. And although there are very different ways of doing that, depending on your industry, the simple fact is everyone's selling something. But then come away from that and how do you get a job? Well, you sell yourself, don't you? You've got to go for an interview and sell yourself at an interview. How do you get your kids into a decent school if you want to go private? You've got to go and sell the allure of, being in that school and how important you are as a potential client for that school. Sales is just represented everywhere. People don't like it when they fail. People love selling when they succeed. People love selling when they win. It's only when they fail, and that's because they haven't learned the skills needed to be good at sales. And you know what? That's okay because it's a skills-based business. You'd be a rubbish lawyer if you stood up in court with your wig on in front of the jury if you didn't know how to do it. So yeah, understand that.
Yeah. What do you think is like? I mean, there's so many parts, but what's like the number one thing or the first thing that if someone's actively watching this going, I'm not bothered about being good at sales, we're not talking to that person. But if someone's here going, I know I'm not very good at that and I want to be better at it, like what's like learning to drive, there's certain things in certain order. What's the first thing you think that they need to do to become great at sales?
Well, again, a lot of the time, if you were to ask people about this, they'd say, oh, you need to be good at asking questions. You need to be good at listening. You need to be, good at communicating. Well, of course, you need to be good at all of those things. But the most important thing you need is a system. You need a process. You don't have to have the best closing ratios. You just have to have a process that you follow, a step-by-step process. And you just spoke about driving. If you learn to drive a car, you take the handbrake off once you put the car in gear and you're ready to pull away. Okay, they say mirror, signal, maneuver. There's a process involved. So it's exactly the same in sales. You need to create a process or use somebody else's. And so I teach people how to create a process and then use that process religiously, a system religiously within their business so that they can become effective at it.
Amazing. I think also a lot of people maybe don't know the difference between selling and closing. And obviously I take that for granted from years in sales, but what if you were to define the difference, especially for people that are really completely unbeknownst and think it's all molded into one, which obviously it isn't? What is the difference then between selling and closing in sales?
Well, you say there's differences. I think that we're always selling. You meet a girl in a bar. What are you doing? You're selling. Closing is to get her to come home with you. And so there's a very brutal way of describing it. And not that I'm condoning anybody that wants to meet a girl in a bar and take her home tonight. All right. Before I get
there's no bars open in England at the moment. We've got no for that. I don't know where they would take that.
But I think that to be a great salesperson, you've got to solve problems. So you have to, first of all, find people that have got problems, and you have to be the person that can solve their problems. So if you've got a product, I don't know, you sell calculators. If that's what you sell, you've got to find people that have problem with numbers. because if you try and sell a calculator to a math teacher, you'll probably struggle. But if you sell a calculator to somebody that's not great with numbers and there's plenty, then there's a market for what you sell. Solve someone's problem. You know, someone's going for a job interview, they don't have a suit, solve their problem. And I think that the more you get tuned into understanding the problem that your product solves, and then you identify the types of people that need that problem solved, is the moment that you step into a world that's really beautiful, because you literally are fixing problems. And you can take your "I hate being a salesman's" hat off, okay, and you can just be someone that fixes people's problems, you know?
Yeah, amazing. What wouldn't you sell? Like, is there something in the world that you go, the bloody hell, there's no way in hell that I'd ever go selling that?
I think I'd struggle with sex toys. That'd be an issue for me, but personally. Not sure I'd be happy selling that. But you know, I have a rule in sales that I say, if you wouldn't sell it to your mum, then you shouldn't sell it to anyone. And I think that you can call that integrity if you want, or ethics. But for me, I teach this every day. If you would not sell this to your mum, you shouldn't sell it to anyone. So if you're selling a product that you're just trying to make money out of, rather than bringing value to the end user of that product, then it's probably the wrong thing to be selling.
It's ironic that, because my sales career started in fitness because my mum ran a gym. So it'd be like trying to sell fitness to my mum would be make sense, because that's what
you were going to say. Toys then?
No. Something I'm really, really fascinated about is, so obviously I've been binge watching this past week your podcast, and there's some unbelievable interviews. I mean, the lady that experienced sex trafficking, you know, is just one of stories that absolutely blew me away. And then there's some really obvious well-known people on the show, you know, the Grant Cardones, the Tony Robbinses. David Coulthard was a great interview. I love that interview. How important, Spencer, is being great at sales to having people like that be willing to come on and spend time with you on something like a podcast?
It's not important at all. I don't think it's irrelevant. I think that the podcast started off as an entrepreneur stroke businessy type podcast in the early days, and I really enjoyed it. However, I got to a point where there was some repetition in people's stories of success, as there should be, because there's a system to success. But I interviewed a guy called Nick Yaris, and he was on death row for 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. And I sat there listening to him with my jaw wide open. He beautifully told his story, and I was deeply moved by what had happened to him and what he went through. And it flicked a switch, and I just wanted to learn more about people's real stories. And that's when we changed the direction of the podcast to try and learn about real people with real stories and real challenges, people that had gone through extraordinary experiences and been able to turn their life around or use that experience to their advantage and help and positively influence others. And so I really am very, very blessed to have had some incredible people to share their stories on the show. And I feel moved by that. And so I haven't got to sell that to anybody. Yes, of course, the fact that the podcast has been successful and the fact that there's over 1 million downloads on it and all that kind of stuff means that I have probably a little bit more leverage than a newbie starting a podcast. Yeah. But I was 2 years ago the newbie starting a podcast myself. And so what did I do? I hustled. I reached out to people, and Tony Robbins is a great example. And the people that were bringing Tony Robbins to Dubai who sponsor my podcast said, Spence, he won't allow you to interview him, or his team won't. So I reached out to his manager. She said no. And then I reached out to his publicist in New York, sent her some flowers, and she said, don't send me flowers. And then I sent her some cupcakes, and she said, well, you could have saved yourself some money, because I don't like flowers, but I love cupcakes. And she made me make a video for Tony. And she said, I'll make sure that he gets it when he's on the plane over to you. And that's how it happened. We just tried every angle. And if you look at, I don't know, Dr. Shafali Sabari, who's the psychologist on Oprah Winfrey's show, I reached out to her on Facebook, and I just begged her. I said, I know you're coming to Dubai. I will be wherever you are. You just tell me. I promise you it will be worth your while. I'll do anything you like. We can talk about anything you want, but please don't say no. And after a number of messages, she went, okay, checked you out. Yes, I'll do it. And so you've just got to, if you want people on your show, you've got to push. And that's not selling. That's just having a goal in mind. You know, the goal is that person's coming, and you're going to do anything and everything you can to make that happen. And sometimes it's charm, and sometimes it's facts and figures. But whatever that person needs to make a positive decision, you use.
Amazing. Just going the extra mile. Going the extra mile. Spencer, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Like, what people that want to stay in touch with you, connect with you, get to know more about you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Well, here, if you're on LinkedIn right now, you can find me on LinkedIn. I put a lot of my content there. If not on LinkedIn, you'll see me at spencer.lodge on Insta. Or you can just go to spencerlodge.tv. There's a YouTube channel as well if you want to go and look at all my videos and stuff. So there's loads of places. My name sounds like an old people's home, so it's not hard to find me on socials.
I've never heard that before.
It does sound like one, though, doesn't it? You know, Spencer Lodge.
Spencer's Lodge. I can imagine it down in Bournemouth now. Yeah, Spencer's Lodge. Yeah, residential home. I can imagine.
There's a place in New Zealand, a hotel called Spencer Lodge, and it's in a town called Rotorua. And Rotorua is the sulphur capital of New Zealand, so it stinks of rotten eggs there. So my name's synonymous with rotten eggs in New Zealand. I mean, you couldn't get it worse.
Amazing. Amazing. Spencer, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for being here, my man.
No worries at all. And thank you for having me. And I wish you the very best with all that you're doing. It's great work.
Big love. Thanks, buddy.